If you've ever spent years trying to earn the love of people who had already decided not to love you, then you'll probably understand exactly how I felt that night. Please subscribe and turn on notification not to miss the next story. Also comment where you are watching from. My name is Anita Wilson, and a little over a year ago, I found myself standing on my mother's front porch at 9 months pregnant, carrying a single suitcase, while the people who were supposed to care about me watched from behind a closed door. I remember placing one hand on my stomach because my daughter had started kicking again, almost as if she could sense the stress I was trying so hard to hide. The Texas summer air felt heavy, and for a moment, I simply stood there staring at the driveway. The truth is, if you had told me that morning that my own family would throw me out of their house before the day was over, I would never have believed you. I had spent most of my life believing family disagreements could be repaired. Maybe that makes me naive. Maybe it makes me foolish. Either way, I believed that time could heal old wounds. I believed that people could change if they were given enough opportunities. Most importantly, I believed that becoming a mother might finally be the thing that brought my family back together. Looking back now, I realize I was wrong about almost everything. My husband, Jeremy Wilson, warned me before he left. I can still remember the conversation as clearly as if it happened yesterday. We were sitting at our kitchen table in Dallas, surrounded by unopened baby gifts and half-finished nursery decorations. Jeremy was preparing for a business trip that would keep him overseas for nearly 3 months. His company had been working on a major acquisition, and the negotiations required him to spend several weeks traveling between London and Frankfurt. Normally, I enjoyed having the house to myself whenever Jeremy traveled. We had been married for 8 years, and his business schedule wasn't something new. But this time was different. I was 9 months. Jeremy looked at me across the table and asked, "Are you absolutely sure about this?" I knew exactly what he meant. My family had never accepted him. Not when we dated. Not when we got engaged. Not when we got married. And certainly not during the years that followed. My mother, Linda Parker, spent years insisting that Jeremy wasn't ambitious enough, which was ironic considering she had never actually bothered to learn what he did for a living. My older sister Vanessa constantly accused him of thinking he was better than everyone else, despite the fact that Jeremy was probably the most humble person I had ever met. My Uncle Robert seemed to The truth was that none of them had ever given Jeremy a fair chance. When we got married 8 years earlier, my mother refused to attend the wedding. Vanessa skipped it too. Uncle Robert spent the entire weekend posting fishing photos online, so everyone would know he had chosen not to come. At the time, I convinced myself they just needed more time. Years passed. Nothing changed. Still, I couldn't completely let go of hope. Maybe this is a chance for a fresh start, I told Jeremy that night. The baby's almost here. Mom's going to become a grandmother. Maybe everything will be different now. Jeremy didn't immediately respond. Instead, he reached across the table and gently placed his hand over mine. One of the things I loved most about my husband was that he never tried to control my decisions. He never told me what I should think or how I should feel. He simply listened. After a few seconds, he smiled. "If that's what you want, I'll support you." I smiled back. At the time, I thought I'd won. Now I know Jeremy wasn't agreeing because he thought I was right. He was agreeing because he loved me. A week later, I packed 2 suitcases and drove to my mother's house. The moment I pulled into the driveway, I felt a surge of optimism I hadn't experienced in years. My mother actually came outside to greet me. Vanessa hugged me. Even Uncle Robert carried one of my bags into the house. For the first time in nearly a decade, it felt like maybe my family had finally decided to let the past go. That feeling lasted exactly 3 days. The first signs were subtle. Little comments, little criticisms, little reminders that I wasn't really welcome. Uncle Robert constantly referred to him as that businessman husband of yours, in a tone that suggested he didn't consider Jeremy's career legitimate. At first, I ignored it. I told myself they were just adjusting. I told myself family relationships were complicated. I told myself patience would solve everything. What I didn't realize was that they weren't adjusting. They were escalating. Every day became slightly worse than the one before. Every conversation somehow turned into criticism. Every family dinner became an opportunity to remind me how disappointed they were in my life choices. One evening, while we were eating dinner, Vanessa casually asked whether Jeremy's company was finally making enough money to support a family. The question caught me off guard. I looked at her and laughed because I genuinely thought she was joking. I mean, she continued, he travels all the time. Nobody really knows what he does. For all we know, he's one bad month away from losing everything. My mother nodded. Uncle Robert nodded too. And suddenly all three of them were discussing my husband as if he wasn't the man who had spent 8 years loving and supporting me. The worst part wasn't the criticism. The worst part was realizing they genuinely believed it. They had spent so many years convincing themselves Jeremy wasn't good enough that they had started treating their assumptions as facts. I wanted to defend him. Instead, I changed the subject. I wish I hadn't, because sometimes silence teaches people they're allowed to continue. At first, I tried to convince myself I was overthinking things. That's what I kept telling myself every morning as I sat in my mother's kitchen, rubbing my swollen stomach and pretending I didn't hear the small comments being made around me. People think emotional abuse is always loud, but sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's just a look,
a sigh,
a reminder that you are not really wanted, even when you are sitting right there at the table. Vanessa was the first to make it obvious. She never raised her voice at first. She didn't need to. It was always in the tone. Must be nice, she said one morning while I was making breakfast, to marry someone who travels all the time while you come back here and burden us. I paused. Burden you? I asked softly. She smiled without looking at me. We didn't exactly ask you to come stay here, Anita. You made that decision. That was the first time I realized something painful. I wasn't a guest in their home. I was an inconvenience. My mother tried to mediate at first, but even she began to change. At night, I would hear her and Vanessa talking in low voices about Jeremy, about money, about how men like him never last. Uncle Robert joined in whenever he visited. He never said anything directly cruel at first. He just had a way of speaking about Jeremy like he was a mistake I hadn't fully admitted yet. Still no news from your businessman husband? He would ask with a slight laugh. I would smile politely because that's what I had always done. I smiled through everything, even when it hurt, even when it was starting to feel like I was slowly disappearing inside a house that was supposed to be my refuge. By the second month, I stopped sleeping properly. Not because of my pregnancy, but because of the tension. There was always something. A comment about food, a complaint about noise, a reminder that I was not contributing. And then one evening, everything finally broke. It was dinner. Nothing special at first. Just rice, chicken, and awkward silence that had become normal in that house. Then Vanessa spoke. Honestly, she said, pushing her food around her plate, I still don't understand what Jeremy actually does. Nobody does. It's like he just disappears for weeks and comes back with vague explanations. My chest tightened slightly. He runs a business, I said calmly. She laughed. What business? Sleeping on airplanes? That was it. Something in me snapped. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly, like something inside me finally realized it had been ignored for too long. My husband has never lacked for anything, I said, my voice shaking now. He works harder than any of you know. He provides for me in ways you don't even understand. Uncle Robert scoffed. Provides, he repeated. You're sitting in your mother's house at 9 months pregnant, Anita. That doesn't sound like provision to me. My mother didn't stop him. She didn't defend me. That was the moment I understood the truth. I wasn't going to find support here. Not ever. That night, I packed my suitcase. Not because I had anywhere else to go, but because I couldn't stay where I was no longer respected. When I told them I was leaving, my mother didn't look surprised. You're choosing him over family, she said coldly. I looked at her for a long moment.
No, y whispered.
I'm choosing peace over this. Vanessa laughed from the hallway. You won't last a week without us, she said. I didn't respond, because I already knew I had lost them long before that moment. The driver I called helped me load my suitcase into a rideshare car. I remember sitting in the back seat, one hand on my stomach, staring out the window as the house slowly disappeared behind me. I thought that was the end of it. I thought I was just leaving a toxic environment. I didn't know I was walking out of something much bigger. I called Jeremy that night. It was almost midnight. He picked up on the second ring. Anita, he said immediately. His voice changed the moment he heard mine. What's wrong? And that was when I broke. Not loudly, not dramatically, just truthfully. Everything came out. The comments, the insults, the way they looked at me, the way they made me feel like I didn't belong. The silence on the other end of the line was long, too long. When Jeremy finally spoke, his voice was calm.
Too calm.
Are you safe now? He asked. Yes, I whispered. Stay where you are, he said. I'm coming home.
That was all he said. No shouting. No arguing.
No questions.
Just that.
I didn't see Jeremy arrive. I just felt him. The moment he walked into the hotel lobby, everything around me felt different. He didn't look angry. He looked focused, like something had shifted inside him that I had never seen before. He sat beside me and placed his hand on mine. For a long time, neither of us spoke. Then he asked one question. Did they ever lay a hand on you? I shook my head. He nodded once. And then he said something I will never forget. Then I won't make this loud. I didn't fully understand what he meant at the time. I thought maybe he meant he would talk to them. I thought maybe he meant he would fix it quietly. I didn't know what was coming. 3 days later, the letters arrived. Certified mail, legal documents, eviction notice. At first, my mother laughed when she saw it. This is a joke, she said, waving it in the air. Who is Jeremy trying to scare? Vanessa read it first. Then she stopped laughing, because the name on the documents wasn't unfamiliar. It was just something none of them had ever taken seriously before. Wilson Property Holdings, LLC. Owner, Jeremy Wilson. The house wasn't rented. It wasn't borrowed. It wasn't family property. It belonged to him. Silence fell in that house for the first time in years. Not the comfortable silence of peace. The kind of silence that comes when people realize they have misunderstood reality for a very long time. The first phone call came that evening. My mother. But she wasn't speaking to Jeremy. She was speaking to me. Her voice was different now. Careful.
Soft.
Almost afraid. Anita, she said, we need to talk. I didn't answer right away, because I suddenly understood something very clearly. They weren't calling because they missed me. They were calling because they understood they had lost control of the situation. For the first time, I didn't feel small. I felt clear. Jeremy and I went back once, just once, to collect my remaining things. The house was different now. Quiet.
No laughter. No arguments.
No confidence. Just panic. My mother tried to speak. Vanessa tried to apologize. Uncle Robert tried to explain. But Jeremy didn't engage. He simply walked past them. And I followed him. That was it.
No confrontation.
No revenge speech.
No final argument.
Just leaving. I often think about that day. Not because of what happened to them, but because of what I finally understood about people. When I was standing outside that house at 9 months pregnant, nobody saw me as family. Nobody saw me as important. Nobody saw me as someone worth protecting. But the moment they learned who owned the roof over their heads, suddenly I mattered again. My mother says Jeremy went too far. Vanessa says we humiliated them. My uncle says we destroyed the family. Maybe they're right, but I keep thinking about that night I was told to leave. No one argued for me then. No one defended me. No one asked where I would go. So tell me this. If your own family could throw you out at the moment you needed them most, and the only person who stood by you was the man they spent years disrespecting, would you have forgiven them? Or would you have walked away just like we did?